So what are you going to learn in 1 month Python? Well, it's hard to really categorize because I'm teaching you a language that you can do many things with. So some of the things I'm going to show you are how to use Python to blank, fill in the blank, basically. Automate repetitive tasks. That's at the core of what a programming language is good for, because a computer can do repetitive things way faster than a human can. So that's really what you want to use computers to do. You can scrape data from websites like Google and Amazon. I'll show you how to build a scraper. You'll be able to interact with services and APIs like Google Finance, weather forecasts, and Twitter. Those are just some examples, by the way, but what you'll learn along the way will allow you to use all sorts of APIs, essentially all of them that you can access with Python, whether it's interacting with a gaming API or sports draft or whatever it is. And also I'm going to show you how to do some data analysis, which is becoming a really, really hot field. And it's definitely a kind of interesting area where if you want to learn how to graph and how to get some really useful insights for your business or for other people's businesses. I want to talk about one specific example because those other examples I gave were a little general of how you would actually use Python in real life. So the other day I received an email from Lou Mormon. Now Lou is a client at 1 month. He has his team using 1 month to train them. And he sent me an email to ask me if I could send over some updated activity metrics because they were at the end of their 3-month initial trial period, and he wanted to decide if he was going to renew their service with 1 month. So he was sort of thinking they had low engagement, but he wanted to see what the actual numbers were. So I told him I'd run the numbers and get them back to him shortly. So I shot an email to Lee, and I asked Lee if he can give me the updated activity numbers for Lee's team. And almost immediately, Lee shoots an email back and he goes, all right, here you go. I have 4 zips with CSV files. That's comma-separated values. It's basically files for data, kind of like Excel files. And he sends me all the steps that users have started, all the steps that users in Lou's team have completed, the last time they watched a step, and all the students in which course they signed up for. And showed me that 23% of them had logged in during June. And so this was a really quick example of Lee had actually written a little Python script to pull this data from our app and was able to get direct access to the data. And so when I asked him for this stuff, he was just able to run the script over and over again and get results and provided some really useful business value. What's another thing I'm going to show you how to do? Well, here's an example of an application that you can just enter a stock ticker and get the current live updated stock price. So it's something we're going to be able to build in this class. Here's another one. Let's say you're on Amazon and you search for something like horsehead mask. I don't know, why not? And you want to actually be able to scrape all the products and what the prices are, so you can keep track of how they're changing on a daily or a weekly basis. Well, we're going to build a web scraper that'll show us how to do this. But I want to caveat this with a statement, which is that Python is huge. And the truth is you only need to know a tiny little bit of it. So you might be asking me, Mattan, am I really going to learn Python in a month? Is that even really possible? Well, the answer is no, not all of it. And in fact, a lot of people never learn all of Python, even if they've been doing it for 10 years. The trick is that you only need to learn what you need to learn in order to do something, in order to build a scraper or build a web app or whatever that blank is for you. In fact, many experienced developers only barely ever scratch the surface. And that's one of the things that actually makes programming so much fun, is that you're constantly learning something new, and it's constantly a challenge and an exploration. So here's a fact. A typical developer searches Google once for every 10 lines of code that they write. And that's a professional developer. You're not expected to have memorized how to do all this stuff off the top of your head. All that data, all the information that you could want to know exists out there somewhere, usually indexed by Google. And so in a sense, you could think of coding as like advanced Googling. And that's kind of what I'm going to teach you. So don't get disheartened if you're not able to do this stuff off the top of your head, or if you feel like you're copying and pasting code from places and you don't really understand how it's working, because honestly, that's how a lot of developers, even the more experienced ones, are working. And slowly over time, you're going to get a better sense of what code is actually doing that I'm showing you. And in fact, more than 50% of developers are self-taught, which means that if you're afraid that you're, by learning this on your own, are not going to be able to compete with people who have computer science degrees or things like that, then you should feel comforted to know that most developers never got computer science degrees. They never studied this thing. They learned on their own, just like you're doing now, and they got themselves to a point where they felt comfortable enough that they could work with other people. And that's one of the things I'm going to show you throughout the course of this class. Now, did you know that there are 1,025,109.8 words in the English language? I don't know what 0.8 of a word is, but this is what happens when you search Google for how many words are in the English language. So there's a lot of them. English is one of the most varied languages out there. And yet the average adult only knows 20 to 35,000 words. So you and I, when we're speaking, if you counted up the number of words I use in this entire class, it's probably less than 20,000. And yet, you wouldn't say that the average adult is not a fluent English speaker, right? I mean, even though you only use a fraction, less than 2% of all of the words in the English language. And yet coding is the same way, but a lot of people feel like because they only know a tiny bit of it, they're not really a fluent developer. I'm going to prove you that that's wrong. And coding is a lot like any other language that you're learning. It's a lot less like math and science, and it's a lot more like learning another language, which we'll talk about in a second. So here's the basic path. I'm dividing this class up into kind of 6 major topics over 4 weeks, and I'll show you the breakup. In the first section, we're going to set up Python, and I'm going to make sure everything is installed on your computer and correctly before we move on, because that's honestly kind of a difficult part of initially learning to code. Then I'm going to teach you basic Python, and that basic Python is going to inform us as we go into APIs, web scraping, building web apps, data analysis, and stuff like that. Then I'm going to cover APIs, web scraping, building web apps, and data analysis, in that order. Here's another way of looking at that, because I couldn't decide between the two views, one or the other. Pick and choose. Which is exactly the point. At this point, I'm going to lay across, for your knowledge, all of the different things you could do with coding, but you should think of it more as like a choose your own adventure. I'm going to show you some information, but I'm going to give you the resources that you can use to dive in further if you're interested in something. So in the notes and in the lessons, I'm going to talk about these resources, and I highly encourage you to make the most of it and explore the stuff that you're really interested in. And also, I will just state, this is one of my favorite sentences ever, that unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you have an idea in your head of something that you're expecting me to cover, or something that you expect this class to cover, but you don't speak that out loud, well, then you're basically setting yourself up for being disappointed if I don't cover those things. So you really should articulate what your expectations are of what you want to get out of this class and make sure that I hear them. Otherwise, honestly, it's not on me if I don't teach you something, but you never told me that that's what you wanted to learn. So keep that in mind as the class is moving along. So here's the agenda for the week really quick. We're going to go an overview of the course, which is coming up, talk about what is Python and installing Python. We'll get into the basics of the command line, which you'll need in order to run Python code. Then we'll run Python scripts and talk about reading code. And then we get into some of the more nitty-gritty bits of Python: printing, errors and debugging, commenting, variables and naming, numbers and math, strings and text, as well as getting user input. And that'll round out our week. At the end of the week, I'm going to have an assignment for you, which you'll have to submit by the end of the first section, and then you'll get feedback on that assignment and move on with the next week. So in the next video, I want to tell you about where we actually start.